Welcome to the Bush Air Podcast, episode number 3. I'm CC Pocock. In the last episode, we discussed how to do a proper familiarization and test flight and determine what the optimum stabilized approach speed should be for our airplane based on the optimum center of gravity and final approach flap setting. Today, I'm talking about how to set up a proper stabilized approach and consistently perform a precise landing, like a spot landing, exactly where we intend to touch down every single time. Again, warning, do not attempt to do a stabilized approach or precision landing, which is a spot landing, without optimum center of gravity ballast in the rear of the aircraft. Now, this may surprise some people, but most pilots, including many flight instructors, don't truly understand what a stabilized approach actually is, let alone how to teach it properly. For example, if you're relying on a flight instructor to show you how to do a stabilized approach, and they're doing so without any ballast in the back of the airplane, or without loading the aircraft to optimum center of gravity, then I'm telling you, they do not know what they're talking about. A stabilized approach is one that results in a safe, controlled, and precise landing with minimal input of control. And to achieve that, everything starts with proper configuration, like the correct center of gravity, the correct flap setting, the correct stabilized approach speed, and pilot staying ahead of the airplane. You've all heard the saying, the quality of the landing is determined by the quality of the approach, right? And it's true. If the approach is unstable, there's a very good chance that the landing will be unstable too. And unfortunately, that's exactly what I see, or we see all the time. Most pilots are inconsistent. One approach looks completely different from the next. Too high, too fast, not enough flap, poor energy management, changing speeds, changing procedures and techniques. Nothing is the same. Every time you're coming in to land on the approach, you're trying something different, trying to find the sweet spot to get that perfect approach, but never seem to get there. Mixing up and being confused between cruise command versus reverse command is another one. Approaching too fast, and then after rounding out and floating halfway down the runway is common. If you find yourself frequently floating and ballooning after having cut the power, you're too fast. Period. You're an accident waiting to happen. You cannot continue to fly approaches like that. And if your goal is to be precise and safe with your landings, then we need to change something. And it starts with aircraft configuration. You need consistency. You need to be able to set up the aircraft correctly every single time early during the approach, preferably as you already come out of the base to final turn, and then consistently land on the exact spot that you aim for. That should be the standard. But the reality is very few instructors can actually demonstrate or teach this properly. And I'm going after instructors here because I've flown with many of them. And a lot of them simply do not know how to teach a true stabilized approach or a proper precision landing. And what makes it even worse is that some of these instructors are on YouTube teaching thousands of pilots the wrong techniques. I watch some of these videos, and honestly, it's frustrating and very annoying. I saw a YouTube video a little while ago where a flight instructor was demonstrating what he called a stabilized approach in a Cessna 170B. Cameras and GoPros everywhere. Good weather conditions. But shortly into the approach, I immediately noticed that there were like multiple problems here. First, only 20 degrees of flap. The Cessna 170 has 40 degrees available, and he's supposed to be demonstrating a stabilized approach with only half flap. He should have had at least 30, if not 40. Secondly, he appeared to be flying alone with no ballast in the rear, meaning the aircraft was likely operating with a forward center of gravity, nose heavy. And thirdly, the speed was way too fast. So now you have a forward CG aircraft, a nose-heavy airplane, insufficient flap, excessive speed, and this person is teaching stabilized approaches on YouTube as an authority figure. Disgusting. That's the best word I can find right now. And this is exactly the problem. There are instructors out there teaching techniques that they don't fully understand themselves. Meanwhile, pilots who genuinely want to improve their approaches and landings are watching these videos, trying to learn how to fly better and safer. Instead, they've been taught bad techniques. So be very careful about who you learn from. Just because someone is a CFI, has cameras in the cockpit, or sounds confident on YouTube, does not mean that they know what they're trying to teach. A proper stabilized approach is not random. It's not improvised. It's not different every single time. It's a disciplined, repeatable process that produces safe, precise results consistently. And that's what we're going to break down in this episode right now. So let's talk about how to set up a perfect, stabilized approach and land precisely on, or at least in the zone that you're aiming for, with minimal workload, minimal input of control. This technique and procedure should be consistent no matter where you're landing. Stop relying on the wrong references as well. Once established on the downwind leg, stop using the altimeter as an altitude reference. It's not going to help you any further for descending towards the approach. Stop fixating on the tachometer or the RPM reading. The amount of power or RPM changes with temperature, wind, and other conditions. Fly by feel. Add power when you feel you need altitude. Reduce power when you feel you need to descend. Stop using ground landmarks, ground references rather, during practice at your home airport, because they won't exist when you go to another airport. If you use angle of attack indicators, stop using it. Turn it off, and even remove it. Throw it in the trash. I don't like angle of attack indicators, not in small light aircraft, especially those used in backcountry flying. But we'll rant about that on another episode. Stop relying on VASI and PAPIs as a crutch to keep you on the glide path and to land on the touchdown spot. These instruments can prevent you from becoming truly seat of the pants with your aircraft. You will never become one with your airplane as long as you rely on these things. What you should be looking at, from the moment you are abeam your intended landing spot, fix your eyes on the runway threshold and your intended touchdown spot or zone. Don't take your eyes off that target. Use the 45-degree horizontal reference that you were taught only as a position timing aid for the base to final turn. Always keep the runway and touchdown spot as your visual priority. Flaps and configuration techniques. Apply the first notch of flaps whenever you want to in the downwind, but before the base turn. And the additional base flap, the second notch, apply that prior to your base turn. Do your final approach flap setting shortly before turning final. So apply flaps prior to the turn. Don't apply the flaps after the turn. Why? Well, there's three reasons. One, safety. Adding flap or applying flaps prior to a slow banked turn reduces stall risk, because the more flaps you have, the lower your stall speed. And as you bank into a turn, you raise your stall speed. So it makes sense, doesn't it? You won't forget about it when things get busy. That's number two. And number three, it reduces workload during the critical final approach. So get as much work done on base. On base, continuously assess whether you will be too high or too low when turning final. Use pitch, power, or both to correct. This is not yet reverse command, so you have flexibility. Aim to be on the correct glide path at the correct approach speed right as you roll out onto final, as early as you can. That alignment makes the final segment low work and stable. And another common problem that I find with pilots is they start turning onto towards the final approach way too early, and then we're off to the one side of the approach, and you have to keep on creeping over to the center of the runway. And by the time you finally get onto the center line, you're on short final approach. So that's another thing. A light aircraft going, the slower you go, the later you need to start turning onto final approach. Always plan as you start that turn, that you roll out on the center line of the runway and not overshoot or undershoot. Let's talk about flying the final approach. So now we're on final approach. Reverse command and power management. These are the two critical things here. Reverse command and power management. On final, you should be largely configured, trimmed, and established at your optimum approach speed as soon as possible. Trim only as required. Avoid constant trimming and fiddling. You may notice that once your airplane is at optimum center of gravity, once you've established that, you will notice that you need much less trimming in the future, if any at all. On final, I think power controls altitude, because in reverse command, pitch primarily controls speed and power primarily controls the rate of descent to keep you on the glide path. Minimize pitch changes. Minimize pitch change because that's going to change your approach speed. Use power to keep the airplane on the desired glide slope. Power is actually your throttle. Power is the main control here. As soon as you sense being a little high, reduce power. If you sense being a little low, add power. Trust the prompt thought. Act promptly. The moment the thought comes into your head, enters your head, act on it immediately. Otherwise, you can get behind the aircraft very, very quickly. Another common thing I see all the time is pilots get behind the airplane because they're too slow to react on the power. And then they start dropping out of the glide path and getting too low and then too slow. And the first thing they do then is add power to try and fix it, but end up dragging it into the runway at a high angle of attack and at a low airspeed, dangerously close to the power curve. Remember that power controls altitude and pitch speed. So you may also need to lower the nose at the same time to increase the speed, then get back onto your glide path, intercept the glide path, and reestablish your stabilized approach. If at any time you get so far behind the airplane that you have to consider a slip, then go around. Attempting to do a forward slip to try and fix a messed up approach, as far as I'm concerned, is totally unacceptable. Because all you're doing is demonstrating that you are behind the airplane, too fast, too high, or whatever, and now you're going to try and fix it with a slip, and more than likely going to end up floating down the runway when you come out of the slip and possibly having to go around or running off the end of the runway into the trees, or almost into the trees. And we've seen many YouTube videos of this sort of thing. It's amazing how many instructors teach that this, slip is an acceptable procedure. Too high, oh, slip. It's unacceptable. Well, we'll talk more about slips another time and where the slips actually belong in flying. But on a stabilized approach, you mess up your approach, now you're going to slip it. And instructors teach their students, that's the way you do it. Because they can't do any better. The instructor, we messed up that approach, but I'll show you how to fix it with a slip. It's acceptable. Then it's unacceptable. Learn how to consistently do a perfect approach every single time. You won't need to show the world that you're beyond your airplane with a slip. All right. Moving forward. The aiming point and the roundout point. Aim slightly short of your intended touchdown spot, roughly a few hundred feet before it. If you aim directly at the touchdown spot, you're just going to round out over the top of it, and then you're going to land long, further down the runway, which is not going to work well in a short field. But we'll get to short field techniques and stuff in another episode. So roundouting ground effect a few feet above the runway, typically around 10 feet or so, and keep enough power on to control the descent so that you don't land short of your target. When you arrive at the touchdown spot, only reduce the power enough to flare and touch down. So you reduce the power, the airplane starts sinking, you come back on the stick, you start flaring for the touchdown. As soon as the airplane touches down, it should do so pretty close to where you're aiming to touch down, and then you can chop the rest of the power. Power controls the approach. Power gets you to the touchdown spot after you've rounded out, and power controls the quality and the safety of the landing. So don't cut it completely before you have basically touched down. This is a habit that will take a while to get rid of, because this is typically how everyone's taught. Pilots are taught. You arrived over the runway, you're in ground effect, cut the power, hold it off, float down the runway, touch down. we were trying to become precision pilots here now. So we're approaching a more precise airspeeds that are slower than normal. So obviously, if you're going to cut your power too early, you're going to increase the rate of descent, and you're going to start descending really, really fast, coming down, and possibly land short and come down hard. So keep the power on, reduce it for landing, and then cut it only when the wheels touch down. Now let's talk about the touchdown and the rollout, or at least just the touchdown. The technique is essentially the same for both nose wheel and tail wheel airplanes, up to and after touchdown. Post-touchdown handling differs slightly between nose wheel aircraft. Nose wheel aircraft settle a little bit more readily. As you touch down, the nose comes down, and that's the end of the story. Then it's like, nose wheel airplanes, the Land-O-Matics. And tail wheel aircraft require more rudder and braking techniques to keep it going straight once the tail comes down. But we're not going to get into too much of that right now. That's another episode. Let's summarize the stabilized approach right now. A stabilized approach is one that produces a safe, precise landing, okay, with minimal control input. And to reduce multitasking by doing as much configuration and trimming as possible on the base before final. Apply flaps before the turns. Focus on the touchdown spot. Use power to control glide path on final. And only cut power at touchdown. Practice to break old habits, like the cut power before the wheels touch down. It's going to take a bit of time for that. After a few bounce landings, you'll see when you keep the power on, your landings are much smoother. When you cut the power too early, it might just be a more solid landing. So you can decide which technique there works better for you. This approach, the stabilized approach, yields consistent, repeatable, and safer landings. Simple as that. So everything I've just described to you, the techniques and procedures that I've just described, that's the method I teach and personally use. In the next episode, we will discuss optimum performance takeoffs. Today, we focused on the approaches and landings because they're more critical and important, and where most pilots experience the most difficulty. I hope this helps you fly safer and land more precisely. If you found this and previous episodes helpful, then please like the episodes and subscribe to this channel and click on the little bell if you would like to be kept up to date with future episodes and videos. For more info on the training that I offer, or to order the Bush and Mountain Flying Handbook, please go see the Bush Air website. The URL is on the bottom corner of the screen down here. And that's all for today. Thank you for watching and for your support of this channel and this new podcast. And until next time, fly safe.